9 times out of 10, it is said us fans will only remember the finish of a match. Now this is true, but imagine somebody dressed up like a penguin halfway through and then rolled around on the floor. Don't matter what they do at the end of this predetermined fight, we're only going to be talking about one thing. You don't always need to have fake animals to achieve this though, because I am Simon for What Culture. Please do subscribe. And this is the 10 best opening 60 seconds of matches ever. Number 10, Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg at WrestleMania 33. I mean, all of this is just great. Arguably the best sub 5 minute match ever, even though it goes 55 seconds longer than that. Goldberg and Lesnar's whole feud was based on super fast action, and they just smashed it every time. At WrestleMania, you could argue it peaked as Brock just ran at Bill with all the gusto of a kid dashing towards free ice cream. He proceeded to hurl Goldberg around with German suplexes before screaming into the wind after the third one, but that's when the bald warrior reappeared from nowhere and hit Lesnar with a spear. The camera work here was just excellent. Before the first 60 seconds were done, we also had some extra spears, one of which took down the barricade, and this was the now fabled Paul Heyman match at its best. It hooked the crowd, it hooked the fans at home, everybody went nuts, and there was no wasted space at all. Number 9, Eddie Kingston versus CM Punk at Full Gear 2021. Just go and look at their facial expressions at the start of this. Talk about telling 1,000 stories with a glare. On the one side, we had CM Punk embodying the idea of a super duper star who hated somebody like Kingston, whereas on the other, Eddie felt like the cat who got the cream as he was about to hit a man in the face that he disliked. Kingston almost beheads Punk in the early going when he finds the camera and smiled like he was the flipping Joker. CM wasn't going to be left behind as he swiftly flips the bird, so what does Kingston do? Bites the shit out of him. We haven't even jumped into the rest because we don't have to. The first minute sums all of this up, and it really is one of the best matches of 2021. Number 8, Will Ospreay versus Ricochet in WCPW. That's right, we are talking about What Culture's own now deceased wrestling promotion, and man, this was good. I doubt anybody would say this match during the semi-finals of the World Cup is even the best that Will Ospreay and Ricochet had, but by this stage they knew each other so well nothing was off the table. So even before they had removed their entrance gear, they were trying to outdo the other, and the amount of moves they attempted in reverse during the first minute is stupid. I don't know how they got one in, let alone the 10 plus. As ever, there were the detractors who said that all the matches between the pair felt overly choreographed, but I would argue this is evidence against that. While clearly thought out beforehand, it really does come across as Ospreay and Rick desperately trying to underline their status as the best, and seeing that with their excess clothes flying around the place just makes it even better. So it's modern day wrestling done almost perfectly, and if you've never seen a match in your life, I bet the first minute here at least would make you stop and take notice. Number 7, Goldberg versus D.D.P. at WCW Halloween Havoc 1998. Is this Goldberg's best match ever? You can certainly argue it. And as the years have gone by, many have said D.D.P. should have won the world title and ended the streak here, as at least it would have followed a top-tier wrestling contest, plus there were no cattle prods. Diamond Dallas Page was just so smart with this, however, because he looked at Bill, realized he was just an explosive force of nature, and built everything else accordingly. So when the bell rings, D.D.P. swaggers up to Goldberg, drops some insults and choice words before engaging in a lockup so fierce you instantly think he may have Bill's number. It doesn't go great as Goldberg uses his strength to smash Page's skull into the turnbuckle, but D.D.P. is ready for that too. He floors Bill with an arm drag, something no one had ever done, as silly as it sounds. That's enough to turn this into a proper fight as they tumble outside the ring, and while Dallas would go on to lose, this opening is a huge success. D.D.P. had figured out the Goldberg puzzle, and he handled it wonderfully. Number 6, Manami Toyota versus Asia Kong at Big Egg Wrestling Universe. What do you do when you have to take on a far more powerful opponent? You improvise. This is what Manami Toyota did when facing Asia Kong, as before the bell even sounded, she smashed Kong's back with a dropkick while screaming like a crazy person before firing Asia off into the ropes. That was a complete fail of an attempt, but undeterred, Toyota flipped over her foe and nailed her with a leg trap sunset powerbomb. It's so nuts the Tokyo Dome crowd is audibly awestruck, and the sheer speed of Toyota is the icing on the cake. Straight after, she returns to the back to try and floor this monster, but when she's caught in the act and drilled with a suplex, I tell ya, this feels like a war. It's also 28 years old as I say these words, and yet holds up today, and if you are looking for a way into this kind of wrestling, you should start here. It only takes 1 minute, and you'll take the bait. Number 5, Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara, AEW Revolution 2020. Given this kicks off before the bell, it's technically not the start of the match. The story does start here though, because Sammy had injured Darby's throat and therefore Darby was ready for revenge. This was all about the grudge and they worked it as such, even though they didn't have the freedom of a stipulation to batter each other with weapons. I mean, you get what is arguably the best suicide dive of all time to get the ball rolling, and the drop kick Darby Allin follows up with shouldn't be as good as it is. Guevara is then being thrown into Barry barricade, which refuses to move, and he is so worried this may be the end, he all of a sudden finds a second wind, jumps off the steel steps, and whacks Allin right in the face. Even the camera operator is struggling to keep up, which adds so much to the presentation, and honestly, talk about ensuring you have a good account for yourself on a proper big stage. Number 4, Ricky Marvin versus Kenta in Pro Wrestling Noah. This match is so incredible and over the top, after the fact people would use it as criticism of wrestling excess. That to me sounds like a win. In short though, Ricky Marvin and Kenta somehow did in 5 minutes what many have taken 40 to do, to the point many say this is the best sprint match ever. It's also kept simple, as the story is both guys want to beat the crap out of each other, and the best way to do that is to take some serious adrenaline and do everything. When I say everything, I mean it literally. It means the opening is just as nuts as the ending, with crazy kicks to the head, kip-ups to avoid more kicks to the head, drop kicks to the head drops. It is just a head fest, but oh so wonderful to see. Only a handful of wrestlers would ever be able to pull this off, and yet Kenta and Marvin mastered it. Number 3, Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair at WrestleMania 38. Regardless how we got there, Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair had a wonderful long-term story that ended at WrestleMania 38. While the silliness at SummerSlam was rightfully bemoaned, the fact Lynch and Belair used it to kickstart their match at the show of shows was inspired. They did the handshake, they went for their finishes, Becky actually hit the manhandle slam to pretend that once again this would be over in 30 seconds. It was great. Bianca's ponytail was also used to great effect and almost served as a way to help Lynch with her plan, and when it didn't work and Becky did the classic wrestling shock face look, it actually meant something. You would be stunned, because what the hell had changed since the summer of 2021? It certainly helps that the rest of the match stole the show, and if they had decided to have gone for a lockup, we would not be talking about this right now. Deciding on action right out of the gate just summed up the program, and it's a testament to both, and I've watched this twice now, and it really is excellent. Number 2, Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson at AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. Do you want to know what happens when you have a dream match on the card? Everyone is invested instantly. It's why you get holy ship chants straight away when Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega are staring up before their first match in AEW, and when the bell rings, my word, the eruption is like we just saw Steve Austin stun The Rock at WrestleMania 17. Once again, this all comes down to their eyes, with Omega acting like he was fully in control, whereas Bryan just looks beyond gleeful. Jim Ross adds to the atmosphere as he shouts, "Let's get after this thing," and as we're getting to the 60-second mark, Kenny pauses just for a moment after Danielson outdoes him. This sends the fans loopy once more because it underlines the challenge in front of the champion, and yeah, this is so damn good. Somehow just kept on getting better. Number 1, The Rock versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. You remember all of this if you saw it live, because it was captivating even before both men had made their entrances. Even though by and large wrestling requires violence and bumps, The Rock and Hulk Hogan were able to get a huge response just by looking at each other, instantly writing this into the history books and cementing it as one of the best matches ever. That's both awesome and doesn't make any sense. They never do anything outside of the ordinary because they don't have to, and the real skill here is how Rocky and Hogan work the crowd and milk every movement. Hulk throwing the People's Champ across the ring before flexing makes the fans erupt, and don't forget he was meant to be the bad guy during this. Not in a million years. I suppose you could say this is the epitome of crowd psychology, hence why it gets into the number 1 spot, because if you can generate this noise before even locking up, well, you absolutely have done something right. Know of any other incredible 60-second openings of matches? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head on over to whatculture.com, where you can read articles like this with your eyes. Make sure you come give us a follow on social media, and of course we have other videos on YouTube. Why don't you just go and watch another one? My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you for joining me as always, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon.